If you've been watching this channel for a while, you know that I always preferred editing on bigger screens. That's part of the reason I bought the bigger MacBook Pro, and for many years I was running this channel on my 27-inch iMac Pro, but of course, as soon as Apple made the switch to Apple Silicon and as I started traveling a lot more in recent years, having a MacBook became a necessity. But I think the main reason a lot of people are switching to MacBooks is because you can turn them into desktops pretty affordably. And for some reason, I built up getting an external monitor in my mind way too high. I was like, well, the studio display is not quite as good as the display panel in my MacBook, and the Pro Display XDR is fantastic, but it's still way too expensive. So I was waiting around for some kind of hypothetical refresh. I thought maybe it would come out last year, and maybe it would come out this year, and it just still hasn't. So I finally bit the bullet and decided, you know what? Apple's not gonna make the monitor I'm looking for, and if I'm shopping monitors outside of Apple's own designed ones, you can actually find them for pretty affordable. So we looked at a lot of different options, and there were a lot of different companies actually trying to get me to review their monitor, and one of them that actually caught my eye is from Titan Army. This is a 31.5-inch 1440p curved display that's probably optimized more for gaming applications, but what I've discovered, and the channel members watching the behind the scenes live streams have also discovered, is that when I have a really high refresh rate display, I can actually edit pretty fast, and I really missed editing it with my Magic Mouse. So at first, I wanted to kind of keep my minimalist desk set up, so I just kind of folded up my MacBook Pro, kept it underneath my desk, and brought out the old UE Mega Boom. If you guys remember way back when I reviewed that on the channel, we still have it, it still works, it still functions, and it allowed me to have a much larger display, edit back with a keyboard and mouse again, and of course, when I need to go on a trip, I can still very easily unplug my MacBook Pro and edit on the go. But as far as this display is concerned, it has some HDR certification, but there's so many different ones that it should just be mentioned. It's not the brightest display in the world, but thankfully most external monitors are typically used inside. And if anything, I actually would probably turn the brightness down on this thing more often than up. It gets plenty bright for me, but the important and really fun thing about it was I was just able to take a basic non-Thunderbolt, USB-C to HDMI cable, plug it into the back of the Titan Army monitor, plug that into my MacBook Pro, and boom, right out the box, my Mac is now outputting 144 hertz to this external monitor. And if you've been watching me for a while, you know that I care much more about high refresh rates just because of that buttery smooth goodness of motion than resolution. Because yes, obviously this is not a 4K panel or a 5 or 6K panel. It's not the sharpest display in the world, but my eyesight is getting worse every day anyway. I can't really see a huge difference between the pixel density on my MacBook versus the external monitor. I mean, yeah, text could be a little bit richer, but it's worth mentioning that this monitor is cheaper than an iPhone SE. In fact, if you use the discount code in the description, not an affiliate link, by the way, they're not paying me, this is not a sponsored video. They did send me the monitor to review, but I was definitely looking at more affordable monitors to check out anyway, and this is just a straight up discount code that you guys can take advantage of. I get no kickback from it, but I was very pleased with how easy the setup was. There was only 3 screws that had to go into the stand to get everything mounted properly. I've never actually used a curved display of any kind before. I wasn't sure if I would like it, but my wife was actually pushing me. She was like, yeah, they're really cool, you should try one out. So she was much more interested in it once she found out it was curved, and I'll admit I was skeptical on whether or not curved displays were that much better, but now that I actually have it, it is actually pretty sweet. It kind of makes me feel like Iron Man when I'm editing. The Final Cut timeline is just curving a little bit. It's almost like the timeline is just like swiveling around me. So the refresh rate is fantastic, and of course if you have a display port on your PC, this thing can actually go much higher. It can go way over 200 hertz, which is a little bit over the top for me. It's not going to make a huge difference in my video editing experience, but yes, this does work with your Mac. However, it doesn't necessarily include a cable that would be compatible with your Mac. That may be one issue for you guys, is that the cable in the box is just DisplayPort, not HDMI. So that's why, of course, this thing is geared a lot more towards gaming PCs instead of Macs, but I loved how simple it was to set up out the box. There's no built-in speakers or anything like that, but the colors on it still feel incredibly rich, and I'm sure while Apple may hit some different color profile with the Studio Display and Pro Display XDR, I think a lot of people just assume they need those kinds of advanced, very expensive monitors, and really the only advantage they have over a monitor like this is for very specific color correction applications with photography. If you're editing, YouTube video footage on these things, it still looks great on this monitor. Like, you don't have to shell out thousands of dollars to have a decent external monitor experience. And I honestly regret waiting editing as long as I did, because in just the last couple weeks of using this external monitor, it already makes me feel like I've been able to edit videos much, much faster, and frankly just have way more breathing room when I'm doing a live stream to have chat or be able to put a different window on my MacBook screen. As you can tell, I've brought back the old white desk, which I got rid of for a while. We put it in the guest room because I was trying to be more minimal, but after a while I did realize that the MacBook Pro still has an amazing display and amazing speaker systems and a webcam, which does come in handy when I'm doing my members only behind the scenes streams, and I felt like I was wasting all of the great, microphones and webcam and speakers that the MacBook Pro offers when I close it up and put it underneath the desk. So I'm back to having a 2 monitor setup. That way I can still utilize all of the great hardware that the MacBook has to offer. I can also still utilize the fingerprint reader, which I quickly realized, oh yeah, Touch ID doesn't work when I leave the MacBook closed and under my desk all the time. So it wasn't the ideal setup. This one is definitely much, much better, and I'm very thankful for Titan Army for sending the monitor in the first place and giving me free reign on the review. I appreciate any company that doesn't make you sign a contract and says, hey, say whatever you want about the product. You can be honest about its performance and even bring up the bad things, which honestly, there haven't been much with this monitor. I can't complain that, especially after the Amazon discount code, this is like a $300 monitor, close to the same price as AirPods Pro for a 31.5-inch 144 hertz monitor. I like how simple and minimal it is. I love how thin the bezels are. It's about as thin as my MacBook Pro bezels. Obviously, it would be ideal to have one size bezel all the way around, but you're just not really going to find that when you're in the budget external monitor market. But the stand itself is made out of metal. It's a really great build quality. My only slight complaint that I've noticed in the past couple weeks, which you guys may not even notice because in my office, as you can tell, it gets much hotter than other rooms in the house because our house is very old. It doesn't have a proper AC system. Long story, but sometimes when it gets really hot in here, I can hear some of the plastic on the back just make little popping sounds. Nothing that's affected the quality of the display, but it's just a little weird when you're using it and you're not even touching the monitor and it goes pop, pop, just a little bit. If you live in a house with adequate air conditioning, you probably would never hear those things, but it just goes to show you that you don't have to drop thousands of dollars to have an adequate external monitor experience. I'm very happy with it. The size, the curvature of it is perfect. The build quality is great, and I loved how easy it was to plug into my MacBook. It honestly made me realize how little I care about pixel density, because at first I was like, uh-oh, a 1440p display at 32 inches, that's a bit lower than the 4K or 6K displays that you'd find on Apple's monitors. But once I started using it, it was like, oh yeah, no, I can't really tell or see a big difference anyway. But I can notice the difference in refresh rate, which currently Apple doesn't sell any external monitors that go over 60 hertz, which is instantly noticeable to me. And that's a feature that I appreciate having parity with between my MacBook Pro and the Titan Army external monitor. So what other more affordable monitors that have decent quality have you guys experienced that you'd like to recommend down in the comments below? Feel free to let me know. And thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. It seriously helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. This is your Alp Sheep here, and I will see you on the next one.